So if you're thinking of buying or selling real estate in Phoenix, it's important to know what's going on in the real estate market. And thankfully, I am here to report on that for you on a weekly basis and a monthly basis. Right now, I am talking about what has happened in the Phoenix real estate market in November of 2020, looking back on that month and talking about what is happening currently as we go into the holidays and to 2021. So I've got all of that information for you starting right now. Hey guys, it's Caitlin McKegg. I'm a realtor here in Phoenix, Arizona, and thanks for coming to my channel. I'm sure you're here because you want to know what's going on in the Phoenix real estate market. And I talk about what's going on in the market on a weekly basis with my weekly market updates on YouTube and IGTV, but I also do a monthly update that's a little bit more robust, and that's what we're doing today. So I'm going to start off, as I always do, talking about our statistics this month as it compares to November of 2019. Starting with our active listings are down 41.6%. Our listings under contract are up 35.8%. Median sales price is up 16.5% at a number of 322,000. Our closed sales are up 16.9%, and our months of supply is 1.4 months of supply. All of these numbers for November of 2020 are pretty standard as far as where we've been trending the last few months. Our active listings are down, listings under contract are up, and our months of inventory is very low. What months of inventory means is that if no new homes were to come on the market for sale, we would run out of homes in 1.4 months. That number is covering all of November, but just recently when we looked at the number of days of inventory, it actually comes out to about 28 days of inventory. That's less than 4 weeks. That means that in 28 days, if no new homes came on the market, we would have nothing left for sale in the Phoenix area. That's really hard to believe and hard to imagine. In a balanced market, we would expect to see about 120 to 150 days of inventory. It's hard to imagine what normal is like because we've actually been short of supply here in Phoenix since 2015. We have a lot of folks wanting to buy homes in Phoenix. We have a lot of people who are moving here from other areas of the country and generations that are now deciding that they want to buy homes, such as millennials. And we also have investors looking to buy investment properties. So there's a lot of demand, and without the supply, it's making it very hard for buyers to find the right property. The good news with all of this is the majority of the homes are being bought by owner-occupied or folks looking to live in the house as a primary residence, not for investors. In 2005, we had a huge spike in investor sales, which is quite a bit of the reason why we ended up having the crash that we did with the housing market. But right now we have a really heavy base of people buying homes as their primary residence. For example, in all of the closings in October of this year, 77% of those closings were for owner-occupied homes, and only 12% were for investors. So our balance is really good there. We don't have a whole lot of investors buying homes in the area, which can create false demand. In 2004 and 2005, we had a large number of newly built homes that were being purchased by investors on 100% financing, and they didn't have any tenants that wanted to live in them. So they were actually sitting there unoccupied. We also had a lot of owner-occupied homes being bought, but with fraudulent loans or 100% financing loans that they really didn't qualify for because of all of the fraud that was going on in the mortgage industry. All of this was creating false demand, not real demand. So that's the main difference of what was happening in 2005 as compared to now in 2020. We had a lot of false demand because of these artificial loans that no one really qualified for. And today the issue is that we're simply just starved for inventory. we don't have enough homes available for those that want to buy them. Versus 2005, we had tons of homes available and no one actually intended on using them. So when I say it's hard to imagine what normal's like, let me show you this chart because this is going to share what the long-term average looks like and where we stand today. Before I show you that though, I just want to tell you if this video is helpful to you, make sure that you give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every week. I always give a market update, and I also post stuff about living in Phoenix and real estate tips and home tours of homes here in the area. So if that's going to be helpful for you, make sure you subscribe and give me a thumbs up. So for Phoenix, you can see the average is about 4,469, and today we stand at 1,193. For Mesa and Scottsdale, we're looking at 1,500 and 2,200, whereas today we only have 390 and 809 homes for sale. This is all from November, but you can see there's a drastic difference between the long-term average and where we stand today in terms of the number of homes available for sale. So our supply has gone down drastically, and what we should be experiencing is this middle column here, which is the long-term average. On the right-hand side, you can see the percentage change, all of which are in the negative, showing how much we've gone down in our supply compared to the long-term average. So yeah, I've talked about this a lot, but supply is obviously an issue for us here in Phoenix, and since May it's held pretty steady, but it's really started to decrease as of late. And so we don't know if that's going to continue to decrease or if it'll hold steady at this point. We don't tend to see a lot of new homes coming on the market during the holidays. Obviously, people are distracted. It's not the prime time to list and sell your home. So we don't really have high hopes for more supply coming to the market before the end of the year. I mentioned demand as well, and it's important to look at both supply factors and demand factors. And I talk about this on every market update. I always discuss the Cromford Market Index, and all of this information, by the way, is coming from the Cromford Report, who studies the MLS data on a daily basis and provides it to their subscribers. This information with the market index is an analysis that the Cromford Report does, looking at supply and demand factors, seasonal factors, and historical factors to create a market index that tells us where we stand in terms of supply and demand, and it predicts price appreciation in the market. A value of 100 is a balanced market. Anything above 100 is a seller's market, and anything below 100 is a buyer's market. If you haven't watched any of my past videos, that might be new information, but I just want to make sure you understand what you're looking at. So our market index has been in the 300s for quite a while now. Remember, anything above 100 is a seller's market. So we are extremely far into a seller's market and have been for a really long time. Every week we continue to break a new record on this market index, and right now we stand at 375. As I said, this value keeps climbing week after week and hitting new records. We've never seen anything as high as 375. The highest we've seen is probably around 320. So this is really high for the market index, and this is being created because our supply is so low and our demand is so high. So it's really putting a ton of pressure on our market and creating this high market index, which is a seller's market effectively. We also need to look at factors for supply and demand individually. So if you look at the demand index, we are actually 35% above normal on the demand index, meaning that we have 35% more demand than a normal market. And then you look at the supply side, and as I've been saying, we're very much undersupplied. We're 64% below normal on the supply side. So as I've continued to say, we have high demand and low supply. That gives you those values to understand we're 64% below normal for supply and 35% above normal for demand. So obviously there is a lot of tension there pulling in two different directions, which is putting us into this seller's market. What I love about this market index is you can see every city and what the market index is relative to that city, because as I speak about Phoenix in general, it doesn't take into consideration the differences in every suburb. There are many suburbs around Phoenix, and each one has a little bit of a different thing going on. So looking at each city particularly can be helpful if you're looking to buy in that area, or just to kind of understand what areas are hotter than others. So let's take a look at every city. This table here is showing the rankings for every city at the end of November. And you can see that Avondale is the highest of all, and it has been for quite a while. Avondale's always been the number one on this list. So remember, our overall market index is 375.6. Avondale's sitting at 587.4. And also remember, 100 is balance. So Avondale is kind of in a whole nother world in terms of their supply and demand. Actually, compared to the week prior than when this was taken, we're seeing a negative 1% change, which means that that market index has actually fallen by 1%. So very slight. It's not something you would actually notice in the market, but it did soften a little bit. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see if it continues in that direction. Gilbert is another top contender, number 2 with 574.9. And Glendale is in the 3rd spot there at 510.2. So all of those green arrows are showing that week over week, those cities have continued in the direction of seller's market. All the red arrows are showing that those cities have moved down in their value, so away from the seller's market. But obviously, every one of these is well over 100, meaning every single one of these cities are well into a seller's market. Some are just not quite as intense as others. Even though there's some cities on there where the value has gone down, don't be fooled by that, because week over week, the average percent change on the market index is 5%. And that's positive change. So 5% in the direction of sellers, 5% towards a higher number. Around this time, as we approach the holidays, like I mentioned, we usually don't see supply increase at all. It typically falls, but we also tend to see demand fall off a little bit too. We are seeing that right now, but at this time, it's not enough to really help the issue because our supply is so low. We always see a rise in supply at the beginning of January, so I would expect to see that, but whether or not that's going to offset the demand remains to be seen. My guess is that we are going to have just as much demand at the beginning of January as we do with the additional supply, and likely nothing is going to change. As I mentioned before, this market index is a predictor of price appreciation in our market. So the higher the value is, the longer it will take that value to get back to 100. And as we look at past instances where the market index has been high, we can see how long it's taken that market index to come back down and get to a balanced market. In most cases, it took about 8 months, 6 months, 12 months, depending on how high the value actually is. Remember me telling you that this is the highest market index value that we've ever seen? Well, what that means is that it's going to take at least that long or longer to get back to a balanced market. So at this point, we can assume we're looking at probably 8 months, 10 months, maybe a year plus before we get back to a balanced market, if and only if that number starts to trend downward. And right now it's only trending upward. So when this number is a predictor of price appreciation, and we know that we have at least a year for that number to start going downward, it's pretty safe to say that we can expect prices to continue to increase in Phoenix over the next year. Now, I don't like to predict anything, but the Cromford Report has done excellent analysis, and this market index has proven to be accurate historically. So I do believe that that is the direction we're heading, and those are the reasons and the data behind why I believe that. If we look at the Case-Shiller Home Price Index numbers, they show the increase in home prices throughout all the major cities in the country. These numbers were just recently published for the time frame of July through September of this year. Phoenix came in at number 1 with a 1.86% increase. The national average was 1.15%. So we blew away the national average and came in at number 1 across the board for increase in home prices. The year-over-year comparison shows that Phoenix had an increase of 11.4%, and the national average was an increase of 7%. So even on an annual scale, we did blow that number away as well. So what I'm saying here, guys, is I don't have a crystal ball. I don't like to predict things, but I have been saying for the last year or so that prices are going to continue to increase in Phoenix because of these supply and demand factors. And there you go. On a national scale, we ranked as number 1, having the most increases in prices here in our market. So what are we gonna do here in Phoenix? We have a major issue with supply and a lot of demand coming in, not only from our local community, but also from outside of the state. Really, the only way for us to fix this is either have a lot of people leave the state and open up homes for sale, or we continue to build homes, which again, that's not gonna happen overnight. But I do have some good news. D.R. Horton just bought a 270 square mile parcel in the East Valley to start building homes. This area is bigger than Mesa, Gilbert, Tempe, and parts of Chandler combined. It's huge. Now, obviously, it's gonna take a while for this to build up, but the area is called Superstition Vistas, and it's located just east of the Maricopa County line. So it's way far southeast valley area, which is bordering around Santan Valley, Queen Creek area, which is exactly where we expected us to be able to continue to build out as we grow Phoenix. So it's good news that there's going to be more building in that direction. However, like I said, it's not gonna happen overnight, and it's not gonna solve our supply problem overnight. We'll just have to see what happens. So that's what I've got for you for November of 2020. Hopefully that's helpful and the information can help guide your decision. I always welcome your calls, texts, or emails if you're on the fence about something or just want to get a bit more information in order to make a decision as it relates to you buying or selling a home. Or if you're just wondering about more information about Phoenix, I'm happy to help with that as well. So reach out to me anytime and I'd love to connect with you. I appreciate you watching my channel. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you want to get more videos and information from me. I will be back on Monday with a weekly update, and next month when I talk about what happened in our market in December of 2020. Thanks again for checking out this video. I'm Caitlin McKegg with HomeSmart.